Here we go. Game number 1 on the way.
Oh, it should be an exciting one. The main event kicks off here. The first time we get to see Empire Wars in a competitive setting, and a brilliant way to open it. In the blue, playing as the English, a Civ that was his signature one for a long time. So you should know it like the back of his hand. Representing Team Liquid, it is DeMu.
On the other side, it is the one and only Corvinus, formerly known as Salami, as we kick this series off here on Canal. This is a map that we've seen a lot in Call to Arms, KP, but this is going to be a very different setup that we have here in Empires at War. As you see, we are starting off with 24 villagers on each side, so everything is going to escalate a lot quicker. In fact, you see DeMu is already on the way to Feudal Age.
Yeah, and this is kind of the design of this mode, right? Is you can actually almost just 30 seconds in, if you cancel 1 or 2 villages, have what you need to go up towards Feudal. So these openings tend to be a lot more aggressive, a lot different, right? There's a lot of Dark Age plays that have kind of been stripped away. They're not as feasible anymore. I would be surprised if, for example, we see any Mongol outpost rushes in this tournament, or at least any successful ones. What that also means is you can kind of spam up these docks. You can actually counter one of the English's early plays, which is, of course, with those short bow villages, they can sometimes deny equity on maps like Canal. That's not really feasible in this map because of how quickly your opponent can have an archer ship.
Yeah, everything is just so different from the random map way of playing this map. Everything escalates a lot quicker, so by the time you get any value from your fishing eco, it's going to be too late. You see, players will attempt to make some fishing happen. There are some fishing boats coming in for both players right now. In fact, I'm actually a little confused about the overlay here. We have fishing boats shown at the top for Corvinus, but if anything, I see that for DeMu, probably because, you know, Delhi fishing boats, they can still fire arrows, so they're counted as military, but it's definitely a little confusing.
Yeah, it is a little bit perplexing. Thank God they at least fixed the issue where they would show up as military population as well. But that is simply because they do attack. And you can see they're going to move in for those attacks right now, just denying the outpost. Brilliant little maneuver there by Corvinus. Made a bit wonky by his own design choice here to drop the wall the way he did. And the issue with this play, and it's someone that we don't see anymore from the Delhi, right? The early days, they always pulled their fishing boats. But the reason we don't see it anymore is now you've essentially idled your own economy to try and block your opponent.
Yeah, but if there is any mode where you can afford that, it's probably Empire Wars. You already have a functional eco, 24 villagers to start with, so you can afford to pull those fishing boats rather easily.
Now, after a delay, the problem with this kind of like you can afford to pull it, right? Has it paid off? I'd argue no. You pulled 2 fishing boats, you delayed 1 villager. You then also pulled 2 villagers, and in the end, what happens? Galley gets out, you have to retreat away. It feels a little bit awkward from Corvinus there. Like, even if he continues to deny this 1 villager, there's no denying that more value in terms of economy has been gained from DeMu in the last 30 seconds.
Galley versus Dao fighting its way through the waters right now. Longbows make an appearance, though, and this is where Corvinus is going to struggle to fight back against this. We've seen this so many times in Call to Arms. Those longbows are extremely oppressive against ships. There is not much that the ships can do if the longbows are microed well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key detail, that you have to micro them. Like, if you misstep, if you're a bit of a muppet with your longbows, you're going to be in trouble. But there's no doubt in my mind, DeMu, I mean, I'd still consider him like a top 5 English player in the entire game, and I'm not talking about his nationality in real life. This is a Civ that I think it must be like his 3rd most played still, at least. I think maybe at this point, Mongols historically and possibly even Ottomans are starting to surpass that. But still just a Civ that he knows so well. And with Longbows, it's not just the ability to control the water. This is a unit that has dictated the flow in Feudal Age since the passing of time, right? Since the early days of Age of Empires 4. It's always been a pinnacle point of English aggressive play.
It is, and in a game mode where you can get to Feudal Age so quickly, it becomes a real power tool. You see, DeMu clicked up the Feudal Age essentially 20 seconds into the game, so he's been building up his longbow numbers already, and now he's using that to snipe fishing boats, to snipe this villager out here, and all that Corvinus has to respond to this is 2 Ghazi Raiders queued up in that stable.
And they are at least going to get out, and they are a little bit of a nuisance, right? They have a lot more health than your standard horsemen. They attack harder as well, so longbows don't even try to tickle them here. One thing that would be really nice for Corvinus to set up at home is a blacksmith's, right? Like, he did go for the Dome of Faith, so he has got the additional scholars. So it would be worthwhile to just start teching up into the undermesh here, as that does affect your boats. And weirdly enough, he isn't doing it. But on the other side, DeMu is going to be teching into that. So like these archer ships, these demo ships, they're going to get shredded. And I'm a little bit worried right now because Corvinus is heavily investing into a navy that loses to Lombo Mass.
I gotta agree. I am not a fan of his position right now, especially because, as you said, his fleet is going to get picked apart by the longbows. There is already a tower in the middle that projects the network of Castle Zora for the attack buff. And more importantly, you see Undermesh will take a long time for him to research. That's the drawback of having Delhi over here. On the other side, DeMu gets his upgrades immediately.
Yeah, well, it's not too long because he built additional scholars, right? He started with 3, added 2 more in. In fact, was it a Dome of Faith play or was it a TOV? I mean, he's losing on
Tower
this
Victory.
waterfront. Yeah, okay, so it's TOV. I thought he maybe went Dome of Faith here. That's quite popular in Empire Wars, but going TOV and not really being able to get that value yet, right? Because it's kind of a weird one. Like, you feel like you need it because the English have this aura, but you're inherently losing when it's just Archer versus Lombo in this type of composition. So, tough position. If he had at least gone for the Dome of Faith, he'd have these scholars to take all those sacred sites, of which there are a lot on Canal.
Yeah, but none of them are taken right now by Corvinus, and that's alarming at this point. In fact, he's not even in a position to take many of these right now, so he's missing out on a crucial piece of the Delhi economy, as DeMu is already piling up resources for Castle Age. I feel like the window here for Corvinus to make something happen in Feudal Age is shrinking, and we know that if he gets beaten to Castle Age over here, he's going to be out-teched so badly.
Yeah, this is actually pretty sick from DeMu what's happening here. Not only is he going towards that Castle Age, he's also getting into a ram here. And keep in mind that Corvinus built his kind of proxy base out here, right? He built the stables. He also built the mosque. So the counter unit of these Lombos is going to be very hard to produce at that stage. In fact, he's already struggling in that regard. I'm also now worried because of how far back he got pushed. This dock does prevent DeMu from flooding through, but it's essentially you surrendering 3/4, 2/3 of the river entirely. That's not much food to work with when you're trying to spam Ghazis.
Yeah, and you see, the moment these Ghazi Raiders pop out, they get picked apart by the longbows. So really,
I mean, why bother?
yeah, at this point, it's just a waste of resources for Corvinus to make Ghazi Raiders on this stable.
Yeah, and they're more priced than your standard horseman, right? I think it's 140 each, so it's 280 resources you just wasted. There's no point in it, right? And also, it's kind of tough to even this archer range. Like, I'm surprised any units are getting out of this. That's a triple galley. They could just kill you off before you get out of range. There we go.
You say that,
okay,
but the guy got away.
The RNG of it. If they're less potato aimy about it. I mean, come on, they shot, what was that, 15 arrows, and I think 2 of them hit. I'd want a refund if I was them. But King's Palace, this is a really good placement. This game is all about wood right now for DeMu, and that's the biggest amount of wood he can grab with this landmark.
Yeah, so many times we've seen that if the player gets confined into this little island that they start on, that could be troublesome beyond Castle Age. So DeMu expanding to the outskirts with that second TC kind of guarantees that influx of wood he's going to need to sustain the production of the galleys, to sustain the production of these longbows, and even battering rams at this point, because he's getting a lot of value out of these.
I mean, this is the problem. When you try to play C against the English, like, you lose one or two ways, right? You either lose to mass lombos on land, or you just lose to Admiralty as the game goes on. It's a very hard matchup. And the worrying part for me is Corvinus hasn't really played the flank. Somehow he's got 2 sacred sites, but they're not the 2 outskirt ones, which would be the easiest to get against the English. Those southern ones are completely still untouched. I feel like he's leaving an extra 150 gold on the plate that's just ripe for the taking.
You know, one thing that we've been overlooking is that Corvinus has been quietly building up a mass of archers over here. He's got a group of units moving towards the base of DeMu right now, and I think that's the group of archers he's going to send into raid. Down south over here, he won't find any good fights, though.
No, and the problem is you're about to dive the primary English TC with archers, right? That's kind of dicey. You can idle this farm, but I think going deeper might be problematic. DeMu reacts quite quickly, does lose 1 village for his trouble, though. The Ghazis, they're tanky, but against that double TC fire of the English, you just get shredded. You can't stand him more than a few seconds. I don't really think
this is desperate. This is absolutely desperate here. Sacrificing the archers, sacrificing the Ghazi Raiders, seeing that DeMu is in Castle Age. And you see, at the end of the day, DeMu ends up losing 2 villagers. Corvinus has his army cleaned up. At least he gets a couple of good picks on these longbows to the south.
Coming. Yeah, these longbows are completely unguarded now. DeMu's just been one-dimensional so far. He needs to kind of pull towards the naval side, but the problem is right now, He's outgunned there. It's double sprinkled versus the archer ships. Perfect time for Corvinus to strike. If he'd waited any longer, he would have lost the sprinkled ships, and that would have meant he could never take this fight due to the support of the Navy.
Yeah, that's a lovely cleanup by Corvinus, and you see, DeMu decided to go into Castle Age. His army was very one-dimensional, just longbows only, and he got punished very badly for that. In fact, he still insists on just going full longbows, but these will be Castle Age units now, so it's going to be more difficult for Corvinus to take good fights against them.
Exactly. I think there was the level 2 ranged upgrade when DeMu got engaged with there, but it's just like there's just so many Ghazis you can't turn on in that situation. Should you have a circumstance where palings are down and you start wailing on them, it's just going to be a one-sided affair. But this raiding could be beautiful here. Ringing the bell. DeMu now knows, and it looks like the longbows are actually going to drag the Ghazis away, so villagers will be safe. Can reconvene the armies here. And now with that network of castles, attack speed aura, it's kind of difficult because of the way the longbows are spread here. I don't feel like Corvinus is able to get a good exchange. He needs to move away from the mass.
Yeah, he's using this to buy time, though, for a Castle Age. And I think he's accomplishing what he wants here. He's intercepting individual longbows that come in as reinforcements, and he bought himself enough time to get the House of Learning going. His eco is still functional, and he at least has one sacred site that he is still controlling. So, I mean, given the circumstances, KP, I feel like Corvinus is back in this.
It's not too bad as long as he can keep control of the mid-map, because now the follow-up objective to tick that box needs to be him getting onto those relics, right? And having Ghazi does help with that. You're up against only longbows. One problem Corvinus has is, like, in some ways, this tech-up desire was somewhat obvious, right? Because typically a Delhi player will throw away their Ghazi for a trade there because they have no intent of upgrading them, right? They'd rather switch to a new unit because, yes, those upgrades are free, they take notably longer due to that passiveness.
Yeah, at the same time, DeMu managed to decap the sacred sites, and seeing that Corvinus reached Castle Age, he knows he needs to press on right now. He's diving deep with the longbows, trying to finish off this navy. He needs to be careful not to be repped by the Ghazi Raiders, though.
Yeah, I think like having half your guys set up palings might have worked quite nicely there, but DeMu, he shows good discipline here. He's not going to throw it away. It's a tool that he wants to keep in his arsenal. DeMu is one of those players that will occasionally use the palings, and when you have this many longbows, you can justify it. But when you have this many longbows, why stop and deploy something when you can just make sure everything in the area is dead?
It's going to be a nice cleanup here by DeMu, Scout helping a lot with that line of sight. So all the army that Corvinus had is now gone. And as much as Corvinus reached Castle Age over here, KP, it takes time to get those critical upgrades in. And it's not like his numbers are spectacular right now. It's 42 to 27 in the army department, but it's very deceiving because most of that is actually Navy for Corvinus.
Yeah, you actually know what Corvinus is kind of going towards here, and it works if he can keep the static defenses out of the affair. I think he wants to turn this into a men-at-arms versus men-at-arms spam, which is interesting. You wouldn't think someone would do that against the English, but something you have to remember is the TOV gives him that attack speed aura everywhere, while DeMu only has it near his buildings. And then, of course, because of the home blades that he currently has researching, he'll have enough damage to offset the additional armor that the English men-at-arms get.
Yeah, but that is assuming that he's going to have time to get those upgrades in. This is why DeMu is content playing this for the time being. For the next few minutes, DeMu's men-at-arms will be so much better than the ones from Corvinus.
Oh man, this is grim.
Oh, and now the fleet is going to get picked apart.
I mean, I was hoping it was men-at-arms, but the more I'm watching what Corvinus is doing here, it looks like it's just a stable spam. But he hasn't got enough stables to work with, right? His wood lines are kind of out in danger territory. He's not extracting drastic amounts. And as a result, because these knights don't come out quick enough, he's floating over 1,000 food for like the last minute and a half now.
Yeah, lack of sacred sites are showing over here for Corvinus. You see, he's got 600 gold per minute, but I think that's deceiving. A moment ago, he had like 200, and you see his gold bank is essentially depleted here. If he had one or two sacred sites, it would be so much easier for him to build up those knight numbers, and I think he might be running out of time here, KP.
Exactly that. This Mango is his only lifeline right now, but there's a decent amount of men-at-arms on the way. So, split up with the Lombos. Men-at-arms going to be chased because they can't be allowed to reach that Mango. Decent amount of Lancers here, but against this many Longbowmen, I mean, you see it, right? They're just getting picked apart. He doesn't have the level 2 range defense. DeMu has the level 2 damage, though, and that's why they're getting sniped so fast here. Repairs coming out from the villages to try and keep the Mango Dream alive, but it's just too discombobulated. Like, I haven't seen a single good wallop from this Mango the entire fight. Now, I think it's at death's door.
Yeah, too many villagers are sacrificed to keep that Mangonel alive. It might stay alive in the end, but look at the villager kill-death ratio now. Corvinus is bleeding way too much eco here. He's been pushed away from the berries, reduced to less than 200 food per minute. No food to work with. I feel like he's running out of gas.
Yeah, considering the Lombos are meant to be hard counted by these Lancers, I think DeMu got fantastic value out of this, right? Like, he's still going to retreat with a decent number of them. He's got crossbows now kind of getting mixed in a little here. In fact, he kind of is floating between Lombos and crossbows due to kind of a weird balance here with the amount of wood in reserves, which I like because, as we've seen, at this point, until that level 2 ranged upgrade comes in, Corvinus really doesn't have a leg to stand on outside of his base.
Yeah, he's got some mangonels to work with, but DeMu is now switching heavily into men-at-arms. And with no villagers to repair these mangonels, basically no front line in front of them, he's really running the risk of those men-at-arms just overwhelming those mangonels.
Yeah, and it's like, if the play was to go into home blades, like that, you know, and now trying to mass these melee units, he's still only doing Lancers, and they are very slow to produce, even when you have Scholars banked inside the buildings. Compared to the Men-at-Arms, Men-at-Arms are going to come out faster. So I really hope Corvinus starts looking for a fight on the eco lines of the English, because this stalemate in the middle is hurting him as the minutes go on.
Behind this, DeMu is also collecting relics now. Credit where it's due, Corvinus did a great job collecting relics himself. He's sitting on 3 relics, now has got 2 sacred sites. Problem is that he lost way too many villagers. He's now down by 30 eco.
Wow, he's going to make up for that a little bit here. You'd hope. Villagers run for their lives. And crossbows are coming out of these archery ranges. So, like, you know, you maybe get, I want to say, 8 villagers, if you're lucky, before this should get cleaned up. So instead, I think he's just going to try to keep idling on the backside.
Yeah, you got to be cautious, though. Killing a few villagers for the price of 5 knights is a very bad trade for Corvinus. DeMu has got enough stone for a keep. I think it's going to be a defensive keep, placed to prevent these raids. I don't see it anywhere, though. I think it's going to be to the south, right?
Yeah, I think he's dropping on the gold, which is south of his King's Palace, because right now his risk is gold, right? He's going into anti-siege, he's building men-at-arms, building crossbows. That is a lot of coinage that needs to be paid. So if we check just to the south of this, where there's a fat gold vein,
yep,
bingo, there you go.
It also protects the wood line, which is not as crucial as it was 5 minutes ago, but it's definitely a key area for him to hold. He now has 66 army against 27, though finally dives in on these troops. And you see, Corvinus invested into springalds over here to counter the ones from DeMu, but the real threat to those mangonels is the infantry.
Which are now wrapping around. He just doesn't have a front line. I mean, yeah, big brain to beat DeMu in his siege transition, but it doesn't matter when you haven't actually kept enough of a front line alive. Siege is going to go down, army's going to be cleaned up, and Corvinus, he's still only spamming lances. He can't rebuild fast enough. DeMu will show you exactly why he's not just a perfect Englishman in real life, he's also a perfect one in game.
And with that, DeMu secures game number 1. You kind of highlighted this in the pre-game. DeMu known for his English gameplay, but also Corvinus. Let's not forget that his main civilization for a long, long time was the Delhi. So you feel like both these players brought in one of their favorite civilizations to game number 1, but it is DeMu who gets the win here.